Hey kids, it's time for another edition of Love to Hate. This time, the early morning edition. I'm Philip Fullman.
And I am Brandon Luna.
At least I think I'm Philip Fullman. I'm not quite sure.
Oh, too early?
Little
Haven't had your
bit.
coffee yet?
No, I'm still having it. How is that pathetic cup of coffee?
I'm drinking on air. Is that a no? That's a no-no.
No. Hey, first of all, no FCC.
Yeah, true.
So we can,
You're
drink
not
whatever.
supposed to do this, though.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the
You know
thing,
what? That
right?
doesn't bug me as much as people eating and smacking.
Yeah.
Because that's just gross. The slurping sound is almost more ironic.
Right.
So that doesn't bother me quite as much.
Yeah, as the smacking of jowls.
Yeah, some people just smack their damn jowls too much.
Yeah, I get it.
Been reading the paper
Chewing gum.
lately, buddy?
Right.
Been keeping up with the news?
Oh, the news. Yeah.
Well,
I love it. I love it when celebrities make news for the wrong reasons. And, we've had a couple of news stories lately. A real sad one and then a real stupid one.
Yeah, and I think we touched on that briefly on, what was it? The show we did last week.
Yeah.
About Stanley having passed. But we didn't really talk about it a whole lot. But, man, I mean, just think the legacy this guy leaves behind. I mean, obviously a lot of people are upset. I mean, to me, it's sad. It's a loss. I mean, he, just from the fact of he was a great guy to have around.
Right.
It was fun to see him do cameos and just, his opinions on the comic book industry. But, even though he hadn't done anything currently, but just think of what he did. And I know people say, well, he had co-creators and such, which is true. But you can't go to a theater, or there's not been, within the last 10 years, movie in a theater that he hadn't created that character, and that movie went on to make millions of dollars. That's a hell of a legacy.
That is a hell of a legacy, yeah. And I mean, that's a literary legacy. Even though a lot of people don't consider comics literature, they are.
That's true.
By all accounts.
And I think if you look at how comic books have grown, I mean, the term graphic novel, I think, is overused.
Right.
But I think there are definitely some books out there that qualify as graphic novels, which just saying, hey, it's an illustrated novel. History of Violence was a graphic novel.
Very much
and
so.
there's a lot out there that goes beyond just the superhero genre that we think of when it comes to people tend to just think of as just comic books.
Right. And I think the Japanese have taken that and gone to the next level with it. Their graphic novels are literally graphic novels. I mean, they're as thick as a book. They've got stories. They're not just like the American ones where it's all...
Well, and it's not the weekly or the bi-weekly or the monthly issue. It is a self-contained story.
Right.
Which, the comic book industry has started doing, and I think they kind of write to that now where I think you have to have 6 issues to make a trade paperback.
Right.
So they'll do these 6 story arcs in order to put them in a trade paperback, which is how a lot of people get their comics now, because they won't go and buy the single issue. They'll wait and buy the trade paperback, which can be great if you're looking to do back issues.
Right.
But they do kind of write to that. But it's been a great way. That's how I discovered Why the Last Man, which you talk about a graphic novel. That is just a fantastic story.
Right. They made a TV series out of that with.
I think they're developing. They're developing that for.
I'm talking about The Last Man on Earth. Or whatever. That's not the same thing.
Oh yeah,
comedy thing.
No, that's something completely different. This would hopefully be good.
Right.
For AMC, one of those that gets away with more, that tells better stories than just your.
AMC did Preacher, so
yeah.
American
did you
Gods.
get into that?
Yeah, I like Preacher. I like American Gods.
I got to check out American Gods. I've read that book several times, but
nothing like the book. I mean, they really went off the rails, but it's still entertaining,
still enjoyable.
But yeah,
kind of like Walking Dead, where you have to get away from.
Right. Again,
Gotcha.
Graphic novel.
And so, there. I guess there's that misconception that comic books are just comic book. And the thing that Stan Lee did, and he's often credited with, is he brought more reality into the comic book, or he made the heroes more relatable. The argument was always DC's heroes were godlike. They
Infallible.
were perfect. Exactly. Yeah. Whereas Peter Parker can't pay rent. Iron Man's an alcoholic.
Right. So on.
I don't
forth,
know.
right.
Hulk has anger issues. Captain America has ennui. Just things like that, where it makes it more relatable. So it was able to speak to adult readers. And I don't know why there's this idea that, well, just because you've become an adult, you shouldn't enjoy these things. Why adults can't enjoy, why you shouldn't enjoy Star Wars or things like that. Because there's a good story involved.
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not, holding down a job, that you're not an adult, that you're not paying your rent or your car insurance.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you're stupid. However, speaking of stupid, yeah, because you know where I'm going with this.
I know where you are.
Yeah.
But, also to throw in another point real quick before you get into that.
Sure.
One of the things I always liked about comics, and I didn't realize it till I got older and I was still reading them, is that they do deal with a lot of social commentary. They're very relevant.
Absolutely.
They're very they take moments in news and incorporate them into ways that children can understand them. So comics and the Marvel dealt with, and so did DC, dealt with racism. They dealt with all these topics that are very
DC was one of the
topics.
first to deal with drug abuse when
Right.
Oliver Queen, his when they had the sidekick, Roy Harper was a heroin addict.
Right.
In the 70s, DC dealt a lot with racism in society with Green Arrow, Green Lantern, hard traveling heroes. Superman, when he started, wasn't taking on supervillains. He was taking on corrupt politicians. He was taking on, arms dealers, gangsters, racketeers.
Right.
So it evolved.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the Fantastic Four and X-Men. These are Stan Lee's ways of relating ideas about acceptance and racism and discrimination.
Right.
And getting people to see it from a different point of view and getting to understand it and maybe stepping back and going, oh, wait a minute. I see what I see maybe I need to look at how I feel and
Right.
and understand those things. So it wasn't just, granted, there were a lot of, and there still are a lot of cheesy things that's just out there for the sake of being a book with guys beating each other up or whatnot. But there really is a lot more to it where it does tackle, like you said, social issues.
Yeah, and to say comics are stupid just means you don't understand subtext. That's basically what that means,
Or that you haven't picked up a damn comic in, I don't know, 30, 40 years.
Right.
Obviously where we're going with this, because again, we talked before the show. Mm-hmm. Bill Maher wrote a blog post, which he is rightfully getting a lot of shit for, where he basically said Donald Trump. I want to get this right. I don't want to just summarize this because I want to make sure they're his words.
Go ahead and read it.
The problem is we're using our smarts on stupid stuff. I don't think it's a huge stretch to suggest that Donald Trump could only get elected in a country that thinks comic books are important.
Yikes.
Now, most people I know that I would consider comic book readers, nerds, what have you, do not like Donald Trump.
No.
Did not vote for Donald Trump.
Correct.
Most of the comic books I've read since he's been elected, there's been that sort of, again, that little subtext, that metaphor for him as president. Speaking out, showing, okay, here's things about this current climate that we disagree with that are a reflection on him. So to say that he only gets elected because we have a country that thinks comic books are stupid, you don't know what people who read these books think. So clearly it hasn't affected them because most of them that I know didn't vote for the guy.
Right.
And if they did, it's not because they read comic books. That is just that's a stupid statement on his part. But
it is.
His job's to be inflammatory and it's worked because now you and I are talking about it. It's been on the news. Whether this was something just to get raised. Here's the thing. Why the fuck do you need to make a statement to get noticed if you've got a weekly show, unless your ratings are dropping?
Right.
Unless that's it, you got a whole, everybody knows who you are.
True.
You don't need more publicity.
Yeah, and it's crazy to go after someone that just passed away, tackling their legacy and saying it's not important. That's pretty ballsy. And that's, like you said, probably done for ratings because he probably wanted to get people talking about him again so they could watch him. And there's a lot of people that do hate watch television. I mean, there's people that I know that can't stand the Kardashians and watch it religiously. Right. It's like, why would you do that to yourself? It's just You're
just going to make yourself mad.
Right, exactly.
Well, and yeah, I
can see you turning red. You're so angry at Bill Maher.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's such an ignorant freaking statement. And there's this idea that nobody is truly dead. Nobody is truly gone as long as there's someone around to speak their name, as long as their name is still spoken. And I guarantee you, people will be talking about Stan Lee 50 years from now. In regards to his characters, long after people have forgotten who Bill Maher is.
Right.
So in that way, he will always have a legacy that this guy won't.
Exactly.
And like you said, just going after that, it's like just because you don't understand it. I mean, sure, you got stuck doing a cameo in Iron Man 2. Oh, shit, he did Iron Man 2.
That's right.
Wonder if he remembers that. I bet he cashed the fucking check.
He probably didn't know it was based on a comic book. Maybe his idea of comic books is Mad Magazine or the comics in the back of Playboy or something. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. It was a stupid statement, and it's just kind of insulting because people want to sit there and they want to paint, I don't know, nerds, people who still enjoy these things as ignorant. But there's a lot of bright people. Think of the guys who program video games.
Right.
That's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not.
Design those, come up with these worlds. There's huge stories involved in them. I'm not a gamer, so I don't know.
Right.
But from what I do know, I know there are incredible stories. I know you can go on YouTube and edit out the gameplay and just watch the story.
Correct. Yeah.
Get told. So there's creativity there. Plus just the design of that. These are entire worlds. And it was Einstein who said imagination is more important than knowledge. So
right.
I'm not going to argue with Einstein.
Exactly, yeah. Because that guy was crazy.
I'd lose. Yeah. Great hair, though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, not being a gamer, I don't understand that world necessarily. I know people who are in it.
I was in it for quite a while. I mean, I think we both grew up in a time when video games were starting to become a thing that you could do on your own at home.
Yeah.
And we grew up in a time of Atari 2600 and Sega and everything else.
Yeah. Because then, my mom felt better about it because it's like, well, now he's locked in. We've paid one price.
Right.
And
we know where he is. We're not worried about him.
Yeah. And he's not dropping quarters. He can just play 112 variations of Space Invaders at home.
Right.
I was like, no, I still need Pitfall.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Well, also you were playing truncated versions that looked like absolute shit. But, it was just the fun of being able to do it.
Well, I think we talked about that last show too. Was it was so different. There was no pause. There was no end to the game.
Right.
Everything just went on and on. It was like you just sat there playing asteroids till you died.
Right.
So in that way, it was kind of like, there was a challenge, but the challenge was just to get the score. It wasn't to end or complete a task.
Well, those back in the day, which was a Wednesday, by the way. That's a steal. I'm stealing that joke. But anyway, back in the day, the games weren't as detailed as they are now. I mean, you were dealing with basically one idea: aliens are attacking Earth, and you got to defend the Earth. That was Missile Command, that was Space Invaders. It was a lot of games, and it was
Centipede,
giant
Centipede,
exactly.
Yeah.
Very simple. As they've progressed and as we've gotten better at designing video games and designing the stories around them and everything, they really are like really long movies. I mean, you get into a game like Skyrim that's got 100 hours of gameplay, and that's just if you follow the story. That's a big deal, right? I mean, and that's not something that someone stupid's going to do. You got to put in the time to follow these characters, to follow them on these journeys, and to follow all the side journeys. And that's not even with the side journeys. So these games are massive, and they're very much like playing a film or playing a story or playing
being
a book.
In a film.
Yeah, like being in a graphic novel. And that's basically what these games are. But they are very time-consuming. So it's something that I think is good in a way, but it's also bad. If you're a single guy that does his job and comes home and all he wants to do is play video games, probably not going to have the best memories of your life 30 years from now.
Right.
But you had a good time when you were doing it. So
yeah, but you're missing that outside world that's it's important
people
because
exist.
I think that's a lot of the regrets people have when they get older is looking back, and it's like you're sitting with people wherever, and they're telling stories about high school or college, and some of them are embarrassing, but you look back at them through the lens of being an adult, and you kind of laugh at, man, look at my stupidity. I can't believe I did that. Or you laugh because it was a great memory.
Right.
And then you've got the kids sitting there going, I was in my room yelling at the
video game, yeah.
Yeah.
They got that moment from Scrooge where he's trying to remember stuff from his life, and he's like, that was the courtship of Eddie's father. When he's like, he just watched too much TV.
Right.
That's what it is.
And that's the thing. Video games can be like watching too much TV or anything that kind of takes you out of that real world because you forget how to interact.
Right.
It's almost that, Pinocchio thing. He wants to be a real boy, but you don't know how because you've not had that interaction. And I know people...
You say that, but they most of these games now, and they've gone away from what they call the campaign games, where you had a story and you played the story and you were done. Now it's 90%
now you're
online.
Yeah, you're online.
So
you
do deal with people,
right?
But not in a reality way. I mean, you're basically
you're just talking over the phone or over the headset,
right?
To people you've never met,
and it's very aggressive, and it's very it's the alpha version of yourself, as it were, and it's not.
And
really
see, that's
who you
one
are.
of the reasons I won't play those games because I don't want to play with other people. I don't want to have to deal with that. If I'm going to play a game, it's like I'll just do it by myself, but I don't want to have to deal with other people. I remember my buddy Joey Salvia, who I did the other podcast with and does the Opie podcast now. Shout out. He was talking about, I forget what game it was that he was playing. I don't know. One of the online games, and he said he was up late one night, and he's on the headset, and he's talking to this dude, and this guy's like, hey, man, you can go over here, you can do this, and, here, I'll give you this shield, or I don't know what it was, but they were talking like 4 hours that they're going through this quest or whatever together, and then the guy's like, all right, man, I got to go. He's, oh, dude, come on, just, a little bit more. He goes, man, I got to go to school. He was like, how old are you? He goes, I'm like 12. And Joey had been hanging out with a 12-year-old online talking about this game.
Right.
Doing this stuff. And he was like, man, that just blew my mind.
Right.
That I just had no idea that it was just, man, I'm here an adult and I'm talking like some 12-year-old about some game.
And that's scary stuff because as an adult and as a parent, there's a lot. I mean, if Joey had been the wrong kind of guy, that'd be a different situation.
And that was a talk that was had with the stepson at one point. Like, doesn't matter that this guy says he's your buddy and wants to.
We didn't have to worry about that when we were playing.
We didn't
because it was us. It was us in the machine, and maybe you had a couple friends over that you knew, and that was it.
But yeah, you didn't have some weird stranger online saying, hey, I'll give you, an extra life or whatever. That could lead to, creepy stuff.
Exactly. Give an example. There's a game called Roblox. Roblox? Yeah, Roblox. Robolx. And it is a online free game that anybody can play. It's very much like Minecraft, which is a game. It's basically Minecraft is basically Legos for video games. You just make these worlds and do whatever you want. Roblox is kind of the same thing, but it's more social. So Roblox, you go, you hang out with people, you do things, you make a character, you build your character up, you go to cities, you do all these things. Well, apparently in Roblox, if you're on the PC version of it, predators have figured out a way to get children to go to these special places, which are now adult-oriented. They've hacked the game, in essence, and made, like, torture rooms and all kinds of crazy, weird shit. So that was in the news. I'm like, well, shit, now I can't let my kid play this game. It's rated for everybody because I've got to watch out for creepos online. Yeah. That should never be something that's happening. That should never be something that's going
because
on.
We've talked about that before. The fact that bullying can now follow you home because you have the computer inside, you have social media, so now the bullies can follow you. Well, now the pedophiles can follow your kids inside too because of the computer.
Right. So it's a lot more dangerous world around video games
than playing a television.
Right, which was basically about as innocent as you can get. When we were kids, that was what you did. That's what your parents gave you, like I said, to put you in front of the TV and knew that you were safe. Have some friends over. You guys can play Space Invaders all damn night. I don't care. You're not going anywhere.
Right.
What they didn't know is we were sneaking out and doing stupid shit. But yeah, it was in essence, it was a way for our parents to kind of feel a little better about not really being parents and just.
Well, I think by virtue of the fact that the games kind of just went on perpetually and there was no end to it, at some point you would quit.
It was a hamster wheel game, yeah.
You
That's
know, and
basically
you'd be
what it
like,
was.
no, I'm going to go do something else now. Whereas now that there's a definitive end to the game, you'll stick with it longer
Right.
to finish it.
Right.
I remember I was in Casey. I was probably in my early 30s, and I had a Super NES. I was late to the game. I bought a used Super NES because I wanted to play Justice League Task Force, which looking at now, it's like a crude game, but it was fun.
Right.
Superman Doomsday, and Legend of Zelda, which I had never played, but it has a number of quests on it and whatnot. And I love that game. And I remember one Sunday night realizing that I got home Friday afternoon from work and had barely slept or left the apartment because I'd been playing Legend of Zelda for, a day and a half, 2 days.
Right.
Hadn't showered, just there in the apartment, addicted to this and feeling stupid.
Right.
Because it was like my brain was just shot. And so then I actually went and got rid of the Super NES.
Yeah. Wow.
Went and took it to a pawn shop.
Yeah.
It was like, you know what? This is not good for my brain. I wasn't quite drooling on myself, but it was to that point where it's like, I can feel like I've lost a couple of IQ points.
So this was when SNES was originally out, right?
This would have been 2000, so it was
Okay.
it was dated at
All right.
some point. It wasn't the latest system, but it was just enough to where I realized, I probably spent way too much time doing this.
It took me till Xbox One to realize that.
Yeah.
I play video games for a long time. I mean, I have kids. We play video games together, that type of thing. So it kind of, I think it pushed me to go a little bit longer than you.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a point when I did realize that, when you have family, when you have work, when you have everything that goes along with it, you have to obviously take care of all that stuff first before you can have the video game time.
Right.
At least that made sense to me. It doesn't make sense to everybody, which is a danger. But my video game time was pretty much midnight to whenever I fell asleep. So there'd be days when kids were in bed, wife was going to sleep, she had work tomorrow. I don't have to work till, really 10 a.m. for the most part because that's when shops open, right?
Right.
So I've got some time. So I'll go in there, play some video games. It's 3, 4 in the morning. I'm like, oh, God, I'm going to get 3 hours sleep and then go do my day. And it just took me about a good 6 to 8 months of that before I realized I can't do this anymore. I just don't have time for it. And you have to cut out things that are non-important in your life.
Well, and
move
if
on
at
to the
that
things
point,
that
if
are
you're
important.
losing sleep, it ceases to become enjoyable.
Right.
So
So it's enjoyable while you're doing it, but as soon as you stop, there's that complete drop. It's like eating candy for 4 hours straight and then stop.
It's like a rush,
right,
and then the crash.
exactly.
That makes
the crash
sense.
is bad. So it took me a while to get away from them, and very seldom do I feel like I want to get pulled in again. A new game just came out called Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a
you
Western
mentioned that,
game.
yeah.
I love Westerns. I'm a big deal. It's a big deal for me. It's the type of game that I would want to play because it's what they call an open world game. And the idea of the open world game is that you don't necessarily have to do the story. It allows you to
you can just pop in wherever and
pop in, ride a horse, steal some stuff, shoot this guy, maybe help someone out that has a house. These guys have been bullying us, like small version of Magnificent Seven, and you go take care of this
I was
one
thinking
thing.
it sounded like Oregon Trail at that point.
And then you just turn it off and go to sleep, So that's great, and I love that. But the problem is, I read all the reviews on the game, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's not open world anymore. Now you have to play for 2 hours to get through the beginning before you can really do anything open." And they took away all the elements that made it fun for me to do the game. Because in the past, I could ride my horse in the middle of the desert, still find some people that needed some help them out, shoot some stuff, blow some stuff up, whatever, and go to sleep. Now, if you do anything outside of the realm of a city per se, even if I just go and I kill a horse, well, now I'm wanted, even though there's nobody around, and I have to fight the police or whatever, the sheriffs or whatever. It just takes away that element. So Grand Theft Auto, the reason why Grand Theft Auto was fun is because you can do awful things,
Right.
things you would never do in real life, and there's no consequences, and then turn it off and go to sleep.
Now, what about those who say that you become an awful person because you play Grand Theft Auto, so now you go out and you smack some hoes and shoot a popo?
I don't really think – I can honestly say I don't think that's really happening unless you've really got a low IQ. But for the most part, I think what does happen is you become an awful person because of the way you interact with other people in that element. So when you're
The people you're talking to online?
Yeah, when you're on the headset playing Call of Duty and you're just being a complete douchebag for 6 hours, it's hard to turn that off when you go to work the next day. Especially if someone goes, "Hey, did you play Call of Duty?" And then the douchebag starts up again. It's like it opens the doors and here it comes. So I think that definitely does change you. as a person. It makes you. I think there's such a thing as being a bully online and what they call it, keyboard warrior, or keyboard
troll. Yeah,
those guys, they can just do whatever they want.
I remember a buddy of mine, a couple of buddies. One was trying to get the other one to play. I guess it was Call of Duty. We were hanging out, and this was 2000. I don't know. Let's call it 10. And my buddy's like, man, I don't play those games. I like video games, but I want to go on there, man, because everybody's racist. It's like, no, they're not. He goes, yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with the names I get called without them knowing they're calling me names. It's like, nah, it'll be fine. So sure enough, he's like, all right, I'll give it a shot. The players' names pop up, and one dude's name just happens to have a racial epithet in it, the N-word.
Yeah.
That basically his name implied that he basically went out hunting black people.
Wow.
And so everybody's like, and you say, he's like, oh, yeah. And so he played for maybe 2 minutes, and the N-word got tossed around. He's like, I'm out. He's like, I just can't play this.
That's crazy.
I was like, because that's the language of it.
And you say, like, FCC, there's no FCC involvement there?
Yeah, there's nothing, to regulate. I mean, it's free speech. So it's just, do you want to play with a bunch of, ignorant redneck racist? Or, just find something else to do.
Yeah, true.
So when you say that it's stupid people that would go out and emulate or the guy who he loses the social skills, so that's how he communicates. I relate it a bit back to, I think there's a little bit of parental responsibility. I'm not saying it's the parents' fault and, you got to hide the video game. But I think there's a bit of explaining that has to go into it. Just like my mom would toss out, you realize that you can't fall off a cliff and have an anvil hit you on the head and live, right? I mean, just these small things where it's like, just to clarify, I know you realize Bugs Bunny's not real, but you really can't have dynamite. Just little things where it's like, okay, understand, here's make-believe, and here's the real world, and they don't work the same. Laws of physics and science apply in the real world. And I think it's the same for kids who don't understand. This is make-believe. This is a pretend world. This is acting. This is a game. This is not what you do outside. And I think if somebody doesn't pull them aside and just maybe let them know, hey, by the way, not acceptable behavior in the real world.
Right.
That could be an issue. Because they go out and they think, oh, this is what the real world is like when it's not.
So what do we need now? After you play the game, there's 20 questions asking how you handle these situations, and if you answer wrong, then you can't play it anymore? I mean,
No. I mean, again, like I said, I think it's just, your dad pulling you aside going, okay, look, you don't rob banks.
Right.
That's wrong. If it's fun in the game because you get to play the bad guy and go rob the bank, whatever. But we don't leave the house and go rob banks.
Right.
We do not go and hire prostitutes, and kill them.
Right.
We don't do these things, son. We live in a civilized society.
Right.
But again, that's something that should happen from the time they're younger.
Bangkok, then it's all.
Unless you're what?
Unless you're in Bangkok, then it's kind of all off. Whatever. All bets are off.
One night in Bangkok, the world's your oyster.
Exactly.
But I think again, if you start a kid young, where you talk to them about the differences, by the time they get older, it's not going to be one of those continual talks that you're going to have with them.
Right.
Like, hey, by the way, son, you can't get bitten by a radioactive spider, because you've talked about make-believe as a kid and they understand the difference. So when they get to be a teenager or in their 20s, they understand this isn't the real world.
Right.
You cannot be frozen and come out. There is no super soldier serum. None of this is real. But again, it starts younger so that when they're, an adult, they have a grasp on social interaction, but also on their responsibilities too. Because if you don't pull them out and you don't set those rules again when they're younger, they're not, and you pamper them, you helicopter them, you cover for them. Then by the time they're older, they are going to move back, live in your basement, play video games, and not pay bills because you never told them, or not even told them, you never made them do it. Because there's a big difference between telling somebody, you got to get a job and pay your bills, like, okay, and then saying, no, go get a job. If you don't
Right.
make them do it, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, you got to do your due diligence as a parent to help raise your children to become living, working adults.
Yeah.
That's the gig. I mean, that is what the gig is, right? And a lot of parents, I think, don't do that. They rely on television and video games and everything else to raise their kids because they've got too much going on. So.
Yeah, and that's, and again, and that's just a can of worms right there. Is well, if you have too much going on, why are you having kids? Look, people have kids. Is there ever a great time to have kids? Probably not. You could always find a reason why it's not a good time, but there are people who I think have kids for the wrong reasons.
Of course.
There are people who don't spend enough time with them, and the time they do spend is not productive because there's not, they're not learning or they're not instructing or, maybe not even leading by example. But no kid should ever feel entitled.
Right.
Because it's basically, I always go back to the Japanese foot binding. They would bind the women's feet or the girls' feet because they were so beautiful, they were so perfect, they wanted to preserve them. So they bound them up and they couldn't even walk on them. But the idea was nothing will ever damage them. Well, by the time you take them off, their feet are gnarled, they can't walk on them because they've never been used. You've basically destroyed them. And I think it's the same with a kid. You want to protect the kid. You look at him and it's like, this is my child. I never want any harm to come to this child. I'm going to just wrap them in bubble wrap and keep them in the house. An understandable instinct. But then when they leave the house,
they're useless.
Yeah, and they're in a worse position because they can't survive. And I've often used the example that my mentality as a parent, as a step parent, was, hey, I see you as a bird. And at some point, you're going to have to leave the nest. And my job is to make sure when you leave the nest, you fly. Because if not, you're going to hit the ground and get eaten by a cat.
Right.
And that's going to suck. There's a lot of this you're going to hate that's going to suck. Because I hated it and it sucked.
Right.
But I needed those skills. So when I left the house, I didn't get eaten by a cat. Or I didn't get jumped by a gang. Or because I didn't end up in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time. Or I didn't end up in jail because I had these lessons, or I knew how to do these things for myself. So
right.
You have kids leaving the house now, and they have to come back because they don't know how to function.
Right. And that's my job as a parent. I mean, I'm doing that. I've done that already once successfully. I'm doing it again, where you just have to take the time to tell your kids, like when they bitch about chores, when they bitch about this and that, you have to tell them, look, I'm teaching you life's lessons here. This is stuff you need to know how to do. You need to know how to load a dishwasher.
Yeah.
You need to know how to wash dishes. You have to learn how to cook, how to clean your clothes. All these things are required for you to be a functioning adult. And if you don't learn them, then you're never going to leave the house, or you're going to be back all the time. And I don't want that.
Playing video games,
So yeah, exactly. So that's part of your job as a parent to do that. And I think too many of us nowadays are not doing that. We're just relying on society to raise our children. And I think a lot of that too is, like you said, there's a point where you have to grow up, and I think a lot of people don't want to grow up. You mentioned a phrase that I absolutely hate.
I'm a Toys R Us kid.
Adulting.
I hate that fucking phrase.
Is an awful fucking phrase. Like, I don't want to go adulting today. You're a fucking adult. You're past 18.
It's not even adulting. It's just like being a human being.
Right.
It's like adulting's tough. Now, just being a human being and living is tough.
Yeah, it's all tough. I mean, that's why we're on this world, is to challenge ourselves and to be better people, hopefully, and to make the world a better place. And most people don't. They sit, they play video games, they watch TV, and nothing happens. The other thing I hate is this big resurgence of people saying that they're bored. Like, oh, I'm so bored. You see it on social media all the time. I'm just so bored. Like, there is so much to do in this world. There's so many things you can do. There's absolutely no reason you should ever be bored. If you ever find yourself bored, guess what? Read a book. Read some history. Learn something. If you're ever bored, learn how to play an instrument. Learn how to code a video game so you can make your own video games. If you've ever got that time where you absolutely feel bored, it's your own fucking fault. Get up and do something.
Well, and what is the problem with quiet time? Why do people have an issue with quiet time? There's in the Talmud it says silence is a fence around wisdom. Mm-hmm. But yet there's many people who they cannot stand silence. I love silence.
I love it.
When I come home and the house is quiet, it's like, man, there's no TV, there's no radio, there's no noise. I could go smoke a cigar in absolute silence. This sounds delightful. And yeah, it's me and my thoughts. And I get it. Sometimes my thoughts are kind of like, oh, they're depressing or they're sad. But sometimes they're happy. Sometimes they're creative. You just never know. But I don't need to be distracted from them. But I think that's what people say when they say they're bored. There's nothing to take me away from my own thoughts. I'm in my own head. Please distract me.
Right.
And I think that's when a lot of growth happens, is when you're in your own head.
Right.
Because it gives you time to maybe think about, focus inward. Because I don't think that's necessarily selfishness. I think that's how you grow.
Exactly.
So I'm with you on that. I'm bored. Like, what do you need to be doing stuff 24/7?
It's man. It's we've gotten
I will
to
say
the point.
I think it.
I picked up my phone, by the way. As well.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it. For those of you who aren't watching, we've given ourselves ADD.
Right.
I really believe that. I think, there's always been people who will truly have attention deficit disorder.
Right.
Most people just got addicted to their phone. And it has nothing to do with you need medicine or you were born this way. It's just our attention spans have gotten shorter and shorter and shorter. And with most things, I will trace it back to MTV and videos. Yeah. Well, right. But I mean, everything became quick cuts. You will get the TV shows. Everything's a quick edit. I don't have time to watch them drive the damn car. Just get them from point A to point B. I'm moving on. I don't have time for the story to set up. Just tell me the story, damn it. Just, give me the bullet points.
Right.
Just show me the end of the movie. Nobody takes time to sit back and appreciate those things because it's like, okay, I need something else now. Right. What's going on? This show's boring. Give me my phone. And we need 3 or 4 things going at the same time because there is that lack of focus.
Right.
And I think video games can contribute to that too because it's perpetual motion.
Right.
Something always going on.
Yeah, I had someone in a cigar shop tell me the other day he doesn't go see movies because all he has to do is watch the trailers, which is kind of true. Mm-hmm. I mean, in a lot of ways, if you get the wrong trailer, you've got a beginning, middle, and end right there. That's the shortest version of that movie you're ever going to see.
Think of what Don LaFontaine would have to do now.
Right.
In a world where all the Avengers die at the end of the movie. Like, well, he could just read the trailer
right.
and just tell you everything.
Exactly. It's sad but true.
It's funny, too, because trailers used to be so much longer. You watch trailers for some movies from the 70s. They're like 5 minutes long. Right. And you have no clue what the hell the movie's about. Right. You get a vague idea of, it's about crime or it's about drug dealers or cops. But you don't know what the outcome is.
Right.
And now there's people guessing. You'll go on the forums for the nerds, and it's based on the trailer. It looks like this could lead into this story. And they figure it out before the movie even comes out.
Right. And a lot of those guys get thank you, YouTube, for these super analytical trailer views where they break everything down and tell you all the spoilers and stuff. Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
But at least those guys aren't bored. They're doing something with their time.
Yeah, and, I will watch those after because I don't keep up with I didn't grow up a Marvel guy, so there'll be stuff in Marvel's movies or TV shows where I'm like, I didn't know that was a thing. That's very interesting. I now picked up that Easter egg, whereas with DC, I pick up more of them. I'm like, wow, that's, I knew that both their moms were named Martha.
Do you remember? Yeah, God, still worst ever. Martha.
Get this. Okay, derailing. Snyder said that because somebody asked him, hey, how come when Superman's mom was kidnapped, he didn't go look for her himself? And he said, oh, no, he did. We had a scene where he flew up and he was listening for her, but he realized that because he heard all the other crime and tragedy all around him and realized that by going and just looking for his mom, he would be deserting other people who also needed him. Mm-hmm. But that scene was cut. Like, fuck you. What are you, an idiot? It's like you would cut that explains it?
Right.
Why would you cut that? That's kind of crucial.
Yeah, that's like the Last Jedi outtakes. Have you seen the deleted scenes from that? They deleted everything that showed Mark Hamill mourning for Han Solo.
Yes, in order to put in the milking the purple thing.
Right, yeah.
Or the
Ridiculous,
purple milk
ridiculous.
or the blue milk thing.
You remember when trailers used to have, like, when you said they were like 5 minutes long or whatever, they also had like no footage from the movie. There would be trailers back in the 70s where you'd watch the trailer and go, that looks great, and you see the movie and all those scenes are not in the movie.
Yeah.
Because they would be in the middle of filming it. It was what they had available, and then they ended up in the cutting
and that
room floor.
happens in some of the Marvel stuff where it's like, why wasn't this in here? Like,
Right.
well, we just had to throw a trailer together, and that didn't end up making the edit.
Mm-hmm.
And then it throws people completely off.
Yeah. True.
Oh no! What did we? I don't even know what we're going to title this episode because we were going to talk about video games, and it just
we've talked a little bit about bullying. I think bullying's a big topic too that we probably need to cover at some
yeah,
point. 'Cause that's a big thing.
And there's a lot of it in the nerd community. People getting
right.
on and just trash talking, like, "Oh, you like DC, so I'll trash it. You like Marvel, I'll trash it. You like independent comics, or whatever." Just again, it's just people who just want to say something and stir shit up.
I'll correct something I said earlier because I did say that Walking Dead was a graphic novel. It was not a graphic novel. It was a comic book.
Yes,
but it was very graphic.
That it was.
You know.
And it's now it's in trade paperbacks or omnibus.
Yeah, that's how I read it. When I did read it, I read it in trade paperbacks. So for me, it was kind of a graphic novel. But
and I think the level of writing, is to that level where you could remove the pictures and add some more descriptors to it, and you would have a novel.
Right.
I think the writing is that good in it, in spite of what Bill Maher thinks.
So one thing I want to get to on video games that annoys me is that we did have a rating system attached to video games at some point. We did have the mature games and the 14 and up games or whatever, and the everybody games. And it seems like the government got involved for that. That was a hot button issue. There was a big movement against violence in video games, and that became something that they did have to go up and deal with. But then it kind of stopped there. Like, it seems like if they were going to do that, they should have done more when it became a social experience. When it became the experience where I am able to now bully you. I'm an adult. I'm 48 years old, and I'm bullying a 9-year-old kid because he can't shoot straight. Where's the issue there? I mean, how come they aren't getting involved in that? If you're going to do the rating thing, do we need them involved in that? I mean, because we never want government involved.
No,
right?
I think that's, as a parent, anything that your kid's going to do, you need to figure out what it is. You need to be aware of it.
Right.
I'm not saying, you tell your kid, no, you can't do it because it's objectionable or whatnot, but at least be aware of what they're playing and what's being said.
I think that's where the ratings came into play, because I think what happened is all these games were getting more advanced and getting more violent and getting more story-driven. Yeah, story-driven. And parents like me who played them in the 70s and 80s were going, well, that's not what games are. Like, there's no way that's part of the, what the hell? They look at the game and freak out because they weren't involved. They
didn't understand the level of violence.
We were the 80s parents were the opposite of the helicopter parents. They, my 70s parents were like, go out, play. I don't want to see you until the sun goes down. I just do it. But there was a level of safety there because you knew everybody in the neighborhood.
Sure,
you didn't have to worry about. Yeah, there were still pedophiles. Yes, there were still kids getting kidnapped.
But at that point, kids were like, "Hey, I'm not taking anything from a stranger. I'm not getting in your car."
Right.
Because we were warned about it. We were told about it.
Yeah.
So there was, I don't know. Kids seemed a little more street smart.
Yeah.
But now that it's like, ooh, don't go on the street. Never. Ooh, don't go there. Mm-hmm. Don't go to the bathroom by yourself. Well, now they're scared of everything.
Right.
There's no sense of, man, I can leave the house and do whatever and I'll be fine. I'll be careful, but I'm not afraid to leave the house. But now I think there's like this fear that's instilled in kids.
Well, the world was a lot smaller then, too. I mean, you look at how you grew up in the 70s. You had no cell phone. You barely had television. You had a phone that was only in the house. That's the only way you could contact your friends. You had to know people to be able to socialize, and you socialized with the people around you. You worked out of that small bubble for the most part.
It was a lot easier for your parents to say, hey, I need to know your friends, whereas now they're like, I don't know who any of these people are on your
And back then, your parents
account.
would pick up the phone and call so-and-so and say, hey, my kid's going over there. Is that cool? Yeah, it's cool. Okay, we'll have him for the night. We'll see you in the morning. Great. Don't make sure he doesn't eat peanuts or whatever if they had allergies.
Yeah.
There was communication there. Nowadays, it's a text. Hey, my kid's going to your place. Is that cool? The text never comes back from the other parent. Now your kid's somewhere, you don't know where he is. Oh, does he have the tracking thing on? Let's use the tracking. I mean, it's just a much wider world. It's smaller and bigger at the same time. It really is.
And it's allowed parents to be lazier too.
Exactly.
Because phones make us lazy.
They do. They totally make sense.
I totally agree with.
I can't tell you how many movie factoids I've forgotten over the years because of IMDb. Because now I can look up anything. I don't have to know the names.
Yeah, you know what? It used to be people possessed knowledge. You knew things. Nobody possesses knowledge now. We lease it, or we just look it up. We don't actually have that knowledge stored inside our head because it's in our phones. Just like phone numbers. I don't know your phone number. I don't know. Hell, I don't know anybody's phone number. I can barely remember the numbers to the shop. I know my phone number.
Right.
And oddly, I remember my 2 phone numbers from when I was a kid. I remember my brother's phone number, my aunt's phone number, and a girl in high school who I had a crush on. I remember her phone number because these were numbers I called.
Yeah.
But now, Brandon Luna.
Yeah.
Send or click, and there's your number. Don't know what it is. I lose your name out of there, I have no idea, and then I'm not taking your calls.
Yep.
So, that, again, it's made us we don't store knowledge.
No, we don't. We don't. And it kind of scares me for history, too, because if something happens, the internet just stops. How much history do we have from the past 20 years? Like, really in print, on paper?
Very little.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes it real. I think, oh, look, I've got this photo, and it's on your phone. It's like, you don't have a photo. You have an image on your phone. Till that's printed, till it's tangible, it's not a real thing. Your phone is a real thing. Anything on your phone is not real. Until it's something you can pick up, touch, whatever, it's not real.
Yeah.
So even though a photograph is not that person, it is an actual photo.
Right. Everything's gotten that way since digital, though. If you look at it, like, I'm a photographer, so I like to back up photos. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was doing this full time, the way you would back them up is you'd put them on a hard drive, you'd store the hard drive. And I would label it like weddings or, fashion or whatever, and then put dates on it and everything. Now I can't even take that hard drive and put it in my computer because it's a completely different type of hard drive. We're on SCSI now versus
So what? You've got pictures on hard drives that you can't access?
I can't access because there's no way to access them now. So
and I've got that with cassettes from when I was in radio when I would do air checks, and now I've got to go dig up some old cassette player and try to listen to these tapes.
Right.
When I want to torture myself. But yeah, I don't. I even had to go track down a VCR because I wanted to watch some of my old TV stuff.
Right.
And was like, man, I don't have a way of watching this. And then I was like, do I transfer it to digital so that I always have it? And then I watched it. I'm like, I don't want to remember this.
Right.
So, but it's nice to pull out once in a while and go, hey, this is what I used to do. But then sometimes you're kind of like, oh, it wasn't that good.
Right.
But it's fun.
Yeah.
And but how long am I going to, what's the life expectancy on that videotape, or, how long am I going to be able to find a VCR?
Right. So takeaway from video games is they're good and bad. I think they're great that they've advanced so much and that they are like little movies, and movies are being made from video games now. And they're, a lot of times they're really good movies, don't even know it was based on a video game. Find out later.
Name one.
I could, if I could think of one.
Everything I've always read is that video game movies suck.
I thought the new Tomb Raider movie was pretty good. I liked it.
I haven't seen that. But things like Max Payne or things like that, the original Street Fighter.
That was awful. With Jean-Claude Van Damme. I think there's probably better movies
They do better
on comic books
adaptations
than there is movies based on games.
Yeah, I would agree. But how long did it take to get to that point?
That's true.
You start with...
Captain America, the cheesy version. That was
you had the original, the Corman Fantastic Four.
Oh, awful.
You had the Red Brown TV version Captain America. You had the one with Mark Salinger, J.D. Salinger's son.
Yeah.
That was horrible. He had the plastic ears.
Plastic ears?
Yeah, rubber ears on the. Yeah, Google that. Mark Salinger, Captain America.
I've seen it.
Ronnie Cox was the president in that movie. God, I want to say Ned Beatty was in it too. God, the guys from Deliverance fell far.
Mr. Luthor.
But yeah, rubber ears on the little helmet there.
Just to go when he put the thing on, just to
so it wouldn't look like it would look like his ears were sticking out of it, but they weren't. But they weren't.
Wow,
really.
That's awful.
Yeah,
you'll
have to check that out. So yeah, I mean, those have come a long way. Video games have
All right, so now
obviously
you got me curious. I'm gonna have to look this up.
Yeah, check that out.
Okay, we're back, and I found a list of the 25 best to worst video game movies. So,
Excellent.
This is good stuff here.
Hit me.
Worst, Super Mario Brothers in 1993.
Bob Hoskins and
John Leguizamo.
Really?
Weird casting, yeah. Weird casting.
I'd say Captain Lou Albano, but
Right. I actually like that movie. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. I don't know why I like it, but I do. Double Dragon. Awful movie in 94.
didn't see it.
Yeah, bad movie. Made 2.3 at the box office. Ouch. Street Fighter was a box office success.
Was it really?
Cost $35 million to make, made $100 million at the box office.
Raul Julia was in that.
Yes, he was. That was his last movie. Poor guy.
Was it really?
It was his last movie.
God,
His last filmed performance. I think he had movies that came out after that, but that was
What a way to go.
Mortal Kombat '95. I actually liked Mortal Kombat. It's another one that I actually kind of dig.
What else you got?
You had the sequel, which was awful, and then you had Wing Commander in '99.
Wing Commander.
Awful movie.
Okay.
Made less than it cost to make, so that's definitely a flop. One of the better ones I thought was the Lara Croft movie with Angelina Jolie. The first Tomb Raider movie I thought was pretty darn entertaining.
Didn't see it.
There's a Final Fantasy movie that kind of bombed at the box office.
They did several of those, didn't they?
Yeah, they did several. Resident Evil, which that as a series I thought was pretty good. Again, same guy that did Mortal Kombat, so same kind of cheesy video game logic in that movie, but it worked. House of the Dead, super awful. The Lara Croft sequel was pretty bad. And then you get into Doom in '95, which was a flop, and it rightly so. Blood Rain, also a flop. Dead or Alive, also a flop.
No.
Hitman in 2007 actually did pretty well. I thought it was okay. You had Postal, which actually was one of the better Uwe Boll movies, which is hard to say because he's an awful director.
Oh, I thought you meant Uwe Boll was hard to say.
No, well, that's hard to say too, yeah.
Okay.
But Max Payne, your favorite.
Yeah.
That one actually was a success.
That was one of the ones I just remembered the name.
Yeah, it was a success at the theaters. There was apparently another Street Fighter movie. Did not know about
they did
that.
a reboot.
Yeah, Street Fighter Legend of Chun-Li. No idea that existed. Prince of Persia. Great story, great game. Should have been a great movie. Was not great.
I remember the trailer for that.
Yeah, was not good. But apparently made $336 million at the box office. So
Crap.
yeah, cost $200 million to make those, so that's still
Oh,
considered a
yeah,
flop.
it's a flop.
And then you have more Resident Evil stuff that all did pretty well, but those were super cheap to make. Angry Birds movie. Why did that get made? Why was that a movie?
I have no idea.
Talk about a video game that has really no plot. It harkens back to the old games of yore.
Where it's something to occupy time.
Right. And they made a movie out of that. Assassin's Creed in 2016 I thought was probably one of the better video game movies. It should have been better. That's one of those games that the plot is so cool. They could have done so much better with it, and the movie was just okay.
Wasn't there it was a video game movie, but not based on a video game, but what was it? It was Adam Sandler, so Pixels or something?
Yeah.
What, the video games came to life? Or
right.
Some shit like that?
Aliens basically took video games as a representation of what they should be to destroy the Earth and came down to destroy the Earth. So you had Pac-Man, you had Space Invaders, you had asteroids, you had all that stuff in there. So kind of a neat idea. Execution was
not so
not
much
so
on
great.
the execution.
Right.
Huh.
Video games will destroy us was basically the idea of that game.
Oh, so it had a higher
It had a
theme to
moral,
it.
yeah.
All right. Yeah, I didn't, and like I said, I didn't see that either. Again, because not being a video game guy, I haven't seen most of these, but...
And think about this. As we progress in technology,
Uh-huh.
we've already got virtual reality video games, right?
Yeah.
They've got it to the point now where you can go to a movie theater and have a video game experience. Have you seen this? They have them at Cinemark. I don't know what it's called necessarily, but basically you go there, you pay $40 or whatever to go do this thing, and you put on this virtual reality outfit, and they actually have They actually have stuff set up in the theater.
I thought it was like an assistant named Stephanie.
Right. Yeah, they have stuff set up in the theater where you can go and actually physically grab something. So you can go grab a lightsaber in the game, and you're actually physically grabbing a lightsaber, and you can do these fights and stuff with people. It's crazy.
So you're like
they've gotten to that level.
Are you like actually hitting somebody with a lightsaber because you can't see them?
I guess, yeah.
In virtual reality,
Yeah.
Huh.
I've seen trailers for it at the theater. They show a trailer for how to play these video games, but I haven't done it yet. But they got a Star Wars one, they've got a horror movie one, they've got a couple others. Yeah,
you gonna take your daughter and go?
I kind of want to. Yeah, I kind of want to see what it's about. But how far into this before it's reality? I mean, or it's a truncated version of it. It's a version that people are going to be okay with sitting at home and doing instead of going out and socializing.
It
Once you
probably
incorporate
isn't that
sex into
far.
that, it's done.
Oh,
I mean,
it's
if you can
over.
have sex
Yeah.
in a video game, there'll be so many
again,
people not
demolition man.
Right.
Didn't actually touch. It was
Right.
all just
mental
firing neurons inside the head. So yeah, I mean, there's probably that now.
Yeah, probably.
So I don't know. I guess if you're agoraphobic, these things can be great.
How are we not as a society though? I mean, we've moving towards that, aren't we? I mean, we've got Amazon now where you can get pretty much anything delivered to your house.
Yeah, you don't have to leave the house. You don't have to learn to interact. And that's what makes a lot of interaction so painful.
So is that humans progressing?
No.
To the point where because if you think about it, like,
no, because when the shit goes down, we're going to need one another.
Right.
You know, the nightclub shooting in Thousand Oaks.
Right.
People needed one another. People needed to communicate. People were helping one another because they had empathy and sympathy and they cared about their fellow man.
Right.
They weren't detached. They were able to relate. When you hear people talk about tragedies that happen and they think about, my thought was, oh my God, what if that was my dad? What if that was my daughter? And they act and do things based on that, thinking, this is a human being. I've got to go and try to get them out of this car. They're in a car wreck. I want to do this because it's real. It strikes a real emotion inside people. So the more dead we become inside, the less we are in tune to those emotions, the harder that's going to be, so that this apocalypse that everybody, some people are prepping for or whatnot, when that happens, you're not going to have that sense of community.
Right.
You're not going to have that ability to empathize with one another, and you're just going to have a bunch of individuals out wandering around.
Right.
Because we've lost that, and we've lost the ability to see ourselves as one. And there was a video, watch me bring this around, that somebody posted that Stan Lee had done, talking about the attitude and the kind of the idea behind Marvel Comics. And his point was, the person sitting across from you, that man is your brother. That woman sitting next to you is your sister. We are all one family. We're all one people. Doesn't matter your color, your race, your gender. We are all family, and we're all of one race. And he said, and that is, what Marvel stands for. So I thought that was a great tribute to him. And it's also true. We don't like to think about it because maybe the guy who cut you off is an asshole.
Right.
But you know what? He and I are both
struggling through life. Yeah.
Yeah. We're both human. And yeah, we are all brothers and sisters in this family. You know me. I'm not a super PC, touchy-feely guy. But that's the truth of it.
And it makes you want to say, fuck Bill Maher.
Yeah, fuck Bill Maher.
We should probably end on that note.
Why don't we?
So if you want to find us, contact us about, whatever we want to talk about.
Yeah, if you're Bill Maher and would like to send us a text or something. Well, not a text, but send it to our new Instagram or something.
Right. You can check us out on Instagram at Love to Hate Pod. You can also find us on Twitter at Love to Hate Pod, or you can go to the Facebook page, like us, and give us a comment there. And don't forget to give us those iTunes reviews. Go to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. We'd very much appreciate it.
And hey, we're working in, we're trying to work in some guest or something. So if you have an idea for Love to Hate and would like to be a guest on the show, contact us on any of those with your idea and why you should be a guest, along with 3 box tops and a $5 bill.
There you go.
Talk to you next week, kids.